Hey there, this is Conmai, and I'm going to talk about the one thing that has helped me enjoy games much more during COVID time. So, have you had trouble recently enjoying games and feeling as if they've been fulfilling or that your progress has been good and all that stuff? It's been pretty heavy on my heart, and frankly, it almost made me quit the game that I've invested 2 years straight into, which is Soul Calibur 6. And I was kind of running out of options in terms of figuring out how to make it happen until a friend recommended a book that I heard about, The Inner Game of Tennis. So The Inner Game of Tennis is a book focused on, something that's called the inner game, which is differentiated by the outer game, which is like the actual performance of the game itself. And that actually describes very much of what is almost every game right now, which is most games nowadays physically are not that demanding, although they can obviously, you can get wrist injuries and whatnot. But like compared to even tennis, you're not like sweating as much realistically. And I thought about it, I was like, wait a second, this describes video games perfectly. Like this inner game thing is a guide on how to win, or at least continue with a lot of passion and perseverance with a game that is emotionally difficult, right? And so I picked it up on audiobook and listened to it, and sure enough, it's amazing. The book's incredible. It really does outline the essence of what steps you need to take as a player to really be able to get into games so you can find joy in them afterwards. But it starts with this interesting conundrum, and that is Self 1 and Self 2 as constructs. So, what is Self 1? Self 1 is you. It's really hard to describe it, the voice that you always hear in your head. There's almost no differentiation between you and Self 1 in most situations, because it's your ego. It's what makes you feel you, and oftentimes is what is juxtaposed against other people or things that validates yourself as a living entity. It means well. It's a very interesting construct. It's like, it's there, it's on your team, but like a league teammate, sometimes it says the wrong thing and then continues to say the wrong thing, and then thinks that bullying you into trying to do the right thing is the correct solution. And that's often the narrative that Self 1 employs on people that are not aware of it. It makes you feel like you don't actually know what you're doing. And even though it is, in its essence, literally a physical part of you, you can't really do anything about it. And it sucks. It's the worst thing on the planet. And so, even though Self 1 is very eloquent in some ways, and at least very effective at speaking to you, it often does more harm than it does good, especially in the context of games, because the second it stops feeling that great enjoyment of a game, of the first initial steps of exploration and the awe of the game and just soaking it all in, it starts becoming very critical. Now, luckily, there's also something called Self 2. Self 2 is your lizard brain. It's the thing that actually takes inputs from other stuff and just turns them into actions. It's an amazing part of your head that it doesn't really talk, but it just does. It does work. It coordinates your hands. It looks at a game state and says, okay, I'll press this button, this in this exact sequence, and then suddenly somebody's head explodes, right? It just does work. It really does. However, we're not very aware of it because, again, it's not very loud. It doesn't talk. It's not this living, breathing entity as we would understand a person, right? With a personality. It just kind of just sits there and demurely processes things and then doesn't even say anything after it does its job. It doesn't pat itself on the back like Self 1 does. In fact, it's so quiet that we often mistake it for Self 1 because Self 1 will come up at the end when Self 2 does something and then take credit for it, as if to say, hey, yo, I did this thing. It's really cool. See, like, look how cool I am. Meanwhile, Self 2 is just like, I'm just waiting for the next set of instructions or some sort of stimuli to act upon something. So the trick to what has helped me enjoy games, and actually has helped me quit games that I don't actually enjoy, is by acknowledging that Self One's talk is oftentimes very subjective and will always apply labels of good and bad, right? Nonstop. Whereas Self 2 listens to very interesting, curious components of the game state, but it doesn't listen to valuations. It's not looking for a score. It's looking for, say, the number of steps it takes to get to something, or the length of time it takes to do something versus the length of time an enemy does something. Like, a good example of this is if Dark Souls or any Souls-like game, the typical pattern of like the first boss always tends to be, say you do an auto attack chain and then you get hit before the third attack. So Self One's analysis typically is this. It says, wow, that did a lot of damage and that was bad. Like, this game's crazy or scary or hard. Like, say then you play the boss again and then it transitions to, yeah, don't you know any better? This game's hard. You just got hit. It took all your health away. What are you doing? It should be very inherently obvious that this is a bad thing. The third time, you might be saying to yourself, yeah, what the heck are you doing? Like, this is so hard. And it either attributes blame to yourself or blame to the game. It's like, oh, this game's imbalanced. It's not fun, yada, yada, yada. None of those statements are particularly helpful. Self 2, however, will operate on different information. So if you take a Self 2 approach to this, in terms of focusing on the game state, here's a couple things that you can do. For example, when you attack, you have your attack chain, right? Usually you have attack, attack, attack. Meaning that the first two attacks are usually pretty quick, and then the third attack is a little bit slower. What happens in most Soulsborne games is that the enemy's monster's attack will come in between on the third clap, because the game designers know that they don't want the player to mash. If you just focus on how fast your attacks are versus your enemy's attacks, Self 2 can figure out that you should probably not press the third button because it locks you in an animation and you die. Being able to be curious about the game's mechanics help give you clarity on the game state, and it will in turn actually help you get better, because it's always almost 100% better than the alternative, which is Self 1 will give you either encouragement or discouragement, but it doesn't actually tell you what's happening in the game. So if you shift your mindset to one that isn't interested in reviewing the game, so to speak, in between like good or bad, and is more interested in the whole entire game, in terms of literally this attack takes this many seconds to do, it makes it a lot easier. Now, naturally, of course, I still have hangups, right? Soul Calibur 6 is emotionally close to my heart. I'm going to let Self 1 take control a lot, because that's just, when you play difficult games, Self 1 gets louder and louder and louder and louder, and then sometimes derails you. But in the few moments that I've been able to shake off Self 1 and just focus on the game state and just play it and observe what is happening, that has given me so much more energy than what Self 1 could ever give me in terms of hype and excitement, which is wild to me because it seems so muted and so quiet, but it really opens your eyes and your heart, frankly, to the beauty of games. It opens up the game in ways that you can never imagine, and then next thing you know, you wake up and you're like, man, this is amazing. Like, I'm good. And that's when, Self 1 tries to take credit, right? I wouldn't focus too hard on pushing away Self 1 for giving you that gratification, especially when you're first learning to accept Self 2. But man, is it awesome. It's so cool. It's helped me enjoy Genshin Impact. It's helped me not play Genshin Impact when I felt like it wasn't fun, because now I don't listen to Self 1 guilt me into thinking, hey, if you don't play this game every day, you're going to miss out on Prima Gems, and you don't want that, do you? And I'm just like, no, because I care about this other moment in a game where it's not linked to this, frankly, a bully inside my head telling me that I want to be there because I'll be missing out on something. It's simply, I'm just playing this game because I'm curious about it and I want to keep being curious about it. And this is, and I'm a pretty jaded gamer, so like, trust me when I say that this mindset is really powerful. And I'm not sure, healthy is probably a different analysis of it, but I can definitely say with confidence that it has helped me get through COVID a lot better, more than I thought it would. So that is literally just a fraction of what the Inner Game of Tennis offers to people who are interested in games. I'd highly recommend reading it, but if you're willing to wait, please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 followers, or not followers, subscribers, because I don't know. I want to unlock that social element of Tube thing, and it would be, I really would appreciate it, just because I do like those points, and that's Self1 talking. Anyway, hope you guys have a great holiday. Hopefully more videos to come. I'm working on it. I'm trying my best. Ciao.